It's in your laws, in the state of Oregon laws, that you could not sell to a person of color. And this is not slavery days. The reason why I love to talk about this type stuff is because people get tired of saying, oh, here we go, talk about slavery again. Let's not talk about slavery at all. Plus, Daniel already did a good job. So let's not talk about slavery at all. Let's talk about laws in the 20th century. Not in 1702, in the 20th century. Okay? That's been going on for a long time. They're still actually on the books. They haven't even taken them off the books. They're still on the books. So you've got these laws that generation after generation families have been living under. So if you cannot buy a home, and then you have white people that don't even know. Do you know there's some white people that did not know that the people had to stay there? They didn't even know. Because even though it's a law, and homeowners that are white, business owners that are white, are all white people business owners? You just say this, or are all white people business owners, yes or no?
No.
No. All right. Are all white people homeowners, yes or no?
No.
No. So therefore, they're not going to know all that. But when you are black and you're in this world that you have told that you have to be, you start to also make assumptions about all white people, right? Because all black people have to live in this area. And the white people get to own a house if they want. Even if they didn't, they could go anywhere and buy a house anywhere they want without the law being in place. So therefore, they didn't know, right? And so therefore, then when you get that, what Daniel was talking about, that anger, then that's when you start to realize the anger is because of their experience being very different from your experience, and you not knowing the story, therefore started now making decisions or opinions about this group of people because you know the outside, but you don't know the story. So then this creates a divide between the races. And so one of the things is happening now is there's a lot of people from California, because California, the state of California, it is in an economic mess. They've had a history of things going on. Prices continue to rise, and people cannot afford to live there. So now they're looking at Oregon and saying, although it's very high to live here, it still is not compared to California, and it is near California. So you're starting to get people moving into Oregon because Oregon had a nice reputation prior to all of the post-pandemic nightmare. That's the one thing, being a native Oregonian, I'm sad about. I'm sad about the reputation that we as a state of Oregon have across this nation. And I'm black. But I still don't like what is being said. I don't like when I'm driving down the streets, what I'm seeing on the streets. This does not look like the Oregon of yesteryears. And so therefore, what's happening is homes are being bought out by people across from California, coming down from Washington, or coming down from corporations. Corporations are actually just buying up home properties so that they'll be able to now resell them at a very high price. Well, what does that mean? Prices our black community out of the home market. So then they're pushed out. And then when they get pushed out, they only have so many places they can go in the state of Oregon. Where are they gonna go if they cannot afford a home to live in? Rent or buy, doesn't matter, it's all the same. Okay? And so now what we're seeing is a mass exodus in the state of Oregon, specifically around Jefferson High School. Okay? Because now what's happening now is Jefferson High School is one of the last schools that has been fighting for years. They've been wanting to shut down Jefferson High School forever. It's been in the news over and over again where they actually wanted to just shut down Jefferson High School and basically close up shop and then just send them all somewhere else. But because the community kept fighting and saying, no, we don't want to shut down Jefferson, then the school district kept coming back and trying to find ways to make it happen. Well, now the demographics, racial and economic demographics are changing in North Portland. So the long answer to your question is, do we have majority minority right now? Yes. But guess what? We went from Jefferson High School being approximately 2,000 students in 1992, around 2,000 students. Guess how many we have in Jefferson High School right now? Somebody guess, just throw out a number.
3,000?
3,000 what?
1,400.
1,400. We are down to 550 students in the entire building.
Oh, wow.
And the building is the size that can fill about 17 to 2,000 students. So, and it's because, again, resources have not always been pushed in there, so the families have not been supported. And when you're living in a society where, even in society, so there are society issues within the African American community that also spills over into the schools. So schools are now trying to become what the society should be feeling. You know, they're trying to get social workers in the building because we have so many families that have been displaced or disenfranchised through different types of racial systems, just in the community alone, let alone not even getting to the educational issues. And so one of the things that I brought, I just want you to know that when you leave here, if you're interested, I brought what is called Roles for Redlining Improvisation. And it basically gives you a paragraph about African American homeowner versus white homeowner versus white real estate agent versus white banker, white mayor, African American renter. So you can take that when you leave, because there's so much I could talk about, but it's too much within this time. But I brought this for you because I think it's important for you to have information. I also brought you, again, something that you can take with you. It's talking about the state of blacks. The state of blacks in education in the United States. You know, and it talks about how education is impacting African Americans in this entire country. I also brought that because I know I wouldn't have time to talk about that. But gentrification is really, really huge. So what the plan is, we're getting ready to go into a remodel, and our students are, so yes, it's majority minority right now. Currently, it used to be 100%, pretty much. I mean, you might want to say 99.9% in 1990, and then in 2000 it stayed that way, and then about 1990s, let's say about 2010, it started to go to about 85% African American. Then it started to continue to go down to about 75%. And now, currently, I would say that although African American is majority, we're at 60%. Whites are at 25%. And then we have Hispanic and other races filling the rest of the percentage. And so, you know, it's changing. And the neighborhoods, the houses that are literally like right across the street from Jefferson High School are on average $550,000. Right across the street from this majority minority school. And now they're moving the school to go to Marshall, which is out there in Southeast Portland. Most of these families cannot afford for their kids to go that far out. So we're seeing an exodus, a mass exodus of families that are young, and particularly families of color who are not being able to not only afford to live in the neighborhood in which they have so much pride about, but they cannot even find a neighborhood in the outskirts. So it's becoming a bigger problem. And the problem is, what do we end up with? We end up with families either completely moving away and going out of state, they're going to Texas or going south basically, Atlanta, places where they might have an opportunity to be able to be economically viable. Or they live here and they're living in extreme poverty, or they're living with multiple people, so they don't even have stable housing. So these are the type of issues that when you have those type of things going on, then when you're sitting in school and majority of the teachers, 95% of the students the teachers are all white, and they live outside the neighborhood or inside the neighborhood in homes that these kids never even can afford. Imagine what that dynamic does between a white teacher and a black student. So there's this disconnect, right? And that disconnect is what creates some of the problems that we have. That's why Courageous Conversations by Glenn Siglington is a nice way of sitting there and saying, how do we have a bold conversation? I know Zaretta Hammond, she's a black educator, writer, and her quote that I love that she says that, you know, one of the things that you have to understand is competence precedes confidence. Competence precedes confidence. So how do we build confidence in our young African American students or young people today? Start by building a relationship with them. Become the counter narrative of how they see white people. If you know that their experience with white people is the narrative that's out there, become the counter narrative by just saying, "What's up, Jamari? How you doing? My name is," and if Jamari says something that's kind of off, just listen and then just try to get to know Jamari and find out why he might say something that's kind of off. Because maybe he's heard it from another adult that has went through some stuff. Maybe Jamari is not living with a mom or a dad. Maybe Jamari is in foster care. Maybe Jamari is raising himself. So when you know the story and you put that in context, then you can now start to have a conversation that can lead or blossom to a relationship where you might be able to learn something for yourself that can teach you and grow you as a person, but you can also help them and help teach them so they can learn and grow. So not just saying black people only love to party and be loud, and there's moments where I love silence. As long as the silence is not going to be impacting me in life in a negative way. Silence can be positive or negative depending on what you do with that silence. If silence is your way of retreating into inaction, that is when it hurts me as a woman of color. But if silence is an opportunity for you to reflect and then take that reflection and then make it the image of Christ into action, oh, I love your silence.
Thank you for that.
Wow.
Although you've gotten at this question in a number of ways already, the question that we sort of set up for our conversation was to invite you, based on your life experiences, but especially in your teaching career, education career, to just start at this question. What does it mean to be young and black in Portland? What are some of the thoughts that came to mind with that invitation?
So one of the things that came to mind when I thought about it, I thought about how much it really is interesting how much I feel that I'm, as a black woman, always having to think about how I present myself or how people will see me. It's all the time. It's in everything. I mean, it's in everything. For instance, I'm gonna go down to the basic level. Me debating about whether I should keep my braids in or not. Because I'm not sure if whether you will receive what I say based on my braids. Because it's constant. There was just an article, it's been all over Yahoo News, the news. There's this African-American young student who's at a high school in Texas, and there was they came up with now this crown policy. I don't know if you know about it. It's hair crown policy, because so many schools were turning around and telling black males that they need to chop off their locks, Jamaican locks, braids, whatever. And he has these wonderful, I mean, they're absolutely fabulous. Whether you like braids or not, they're fabulous. But they want him to cut them off because of a school policy. And so and there's a history of students saying they can't go to graduation unless they take their braids out. I remember when I was first a teacher, they were turning around and talking about all these rules that were all based on, they're trying to make it like, this is just the proper way, this is the business way, this is about being professional. It's under the umbrella of professionalism, but really the professionalism, really it was based on, they don't want to see black or other people with kinky hair show their kinky hair or their different texture, because that's all it is. It's a difference in texture. My hair can do stuff your hair can't. And guess what? I admire what your hair can do just as much as some people might admire what I can do with mine. My mom's hair is nothing like mine, because my mom is from Copenhagen, Denmark, and she has white skin, blue eyes. Okay? Different experience. Her hair, she can just wash and go. I can't wash and go, let me tell you. Right? And so, but when you think about that somebody still might look at me and determine that the intelligence, my cognitive load, is less based on how I dress. And that happens in schools all the time. That if you look a certain way, then it's most likely your cognitive load is lower based on the way you look. So what happens? Because they're making that assumption, not in high school, they start that in kindergarten. They have these test studies that they've done where they video recorded children sitting at a table, and teachers automatically look at the black boy. My grandson, I don't know where he's at, probably. Okay, he went to the bathroom. Okay, he is as chocolate as they come. Meaning his skin is dark skin. And immediately, my daughter was already emailing me in first grade or kindergarten and saying, there's an issue, what do I do? And I have to turn around and have this conversation with her, which I know that white people don't always have to experience, where you have to now have a conversation about race and about some of these ways in which they're responding to my black grandson in the 21st century in 2022. And it sounds like something back in 1952. And we're in 2022, and I now, even though I am a principal, I still now have to talk to my own daughter about my grandson in order to help her navigate the low expectations and the assumptions that the white teachers will have about him before he's even opened his mouth. And we have to navigate that constantly. So, you get a couple black folks making some off-the-cuff comments that might actually come across as prejudice to you because that's not who you are. it's probably an opportunity for you to say, I am so sorry that you have experienced that. Man, can you tell me more about it? Instead of walking away and saying, oh, they're just assuming I'm that person. How about just turn around and listen and then still continue to engage with that person so that you can know the story? Because guess what? Black kids like white teachers too. They don't hate them all. The ones that are their favorites are the ones who go a step beyond, look past their flaws and alls, as we call it, flaws and alls, and willing to have a conversation. So then when they know their story, they now can reach them. Now that kid that at first wouldn't even do any work now is the first kid to raise their hand in the class because of the relationship and the knowledge that they have.
Thank you.
Amen.
Friends, I'm aware of the hour here, and we promised Candace that this would be an hour. But I want to make sure that we have enough time for everyone to come and greet our guest. And let's end by just saying to Candace and her family, you need to come back.
Yes.
Yes, please.
First of all, let me say this. When Mark announced about the picnic, I gotta tell you something really funny. So we just had our church picnic, right? And our picnic was Labor Day weekend. And we had a spaghetti cook-off. And needless to say, one of our contestants, who was my family member, but I'll leave her name out of it, but we had this whole conversation because they didn't say who made the spaghetti and all this stuff, and we had this whole conversation about it's a cook-off. You can't submit a spaghetti that you did not make and then win a prize. That's why it's called a cook-off. It is a competition, and it's between your culinary skills. What are you missing here? So when I saw that whole thing came, because me and my daughter, we all looked at each other like, Thank you, Pastor Mark, for saying it's a competition. And you need to be the one that cooks the meal, because we're looking at your culinary skills. But anyway, I loved it, and then I was like, we should come to their picnic.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And one last comment, I just want to make this last comment. Somebody said, another young lady talked about, I think it was the lady in the sweater, she was talking about that the word picnic, is actually a negative term, right? And it instantly, when she said that, I got triggered because me and my husband, we love to watch House Hunters. And they were going through the houses, you know how they say, oh, I love the crown molding, and oh, look at the tray ceiling, and all that stuff. And then the lady said, and let's now go into the primary bedroom. And I said, and my husband goes, primary? And I said, you know why, babe? They finally figured it out that the master suite that we've been calling it for years was based on the master of the slave's home. That's where that term came from. And so when you hear people talk about institutionalized racism, you have to understand that's how deeply rooted it is in our community that even the various words we use, even black people use those words, and not all black people know that either. Not all black people know. There's black people talking about, oh, I'm gonna get me a master suite, and don't know that it was tied to slavery. But the truth of the matter is, you're never going to be able to change, this is me, Candace, my own opinion, you're never going to be able to change every single word in order to change anything. So if you say master suite, let's not have a heart attack. If you say picnic, because we just had a picnic, don't have a heart attack, because the truth of the matter is some of that knowledge is based on your education or your understanding. And everybody's not going to be able to look up every single thing, right? Lynchings was because of ropes. I'm still gonna use a rope to jump rope. Right? So make sure that when we're doing this, again, we're putting it within context, right? A knife can be a weapon, but we still use knives to chop up our vegetables, right? You know, guns are really, like, I'm serious, guns are very scary because our community are constantly dying from gun violence. But it's not the gun itself. And I'm not getting into politics. I'm just saying we have to put things into context. And we have to make sure that, again, at the end of the day, what is your story? And how can I get to know you? And let me make sure that whatever you say, I'm not now saying that's how all black people think. And I'm not saying whatever Daniel said, that's how all Quakers think. Or that's how all white men think. Because at the end of the day, we are all, God made us beautifully. We are wonderfully and beautifully made, unique, right? We are uniquely made. He has counted every